You're watching TVC Breakfast. Now, for a long time, Nigerian youth have been clamoring to take up the mantle of leadership and contribute to Nigeria's political space. In the aftermath of the NSAS protests, the quest for youth leadership has been reawakened. The big question is, how ready are youth to take over leadership positions? Joining me to answer this question is Acting National Chair, Youth Party, Tomiwa Aladekomo, and strategy consultant, public affairs analyst, Dikpo. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Thank you for having us.
Now, this issue began, to be talked about again. It was raised again after the hashtag NSAS protests. Before the 2019 elections, there was the clamor for youth to take over the mantle of leadership, occupy certain positions, and that led to the birthing of the Not Too Young to Run. And certain age limitations were changed. And we also saw what happened at the hashtag NSAS. And the question a lot of persons have been asking, are the youth ready to take over the mantle of leadership? Are they ready to make the changes required in the society? Now, you played actively in the 2019 elections. From your perspective, can you tell us that the youth are prepared, especially when you look at what you had to go through at the time?
Thank you, Veronica, for having me on here today. I believe the youth are ready to take over governance of Nigeria, and I believe that it'd be very difficult for them to do any worse than the generations that we've had sort of in governance since 1999, basically. We've had almost 20 years, or just over 20 years, of civilian democratic government, where we've seen Nigeria's indices sort of steadily fall over that time. We've become the poverty, and particularly over the most recent administration. We've become the poverty capital of the world. Our education has fallen from once great heights where everyday Nigerians could get a fantastic education in Nigeria to a place where our education is really quite poor. Our healthcare system is really quite poor. We see doctors leaving the country on a daily basis, moving to other countries, taking our talent out. And so I think, one, we could hardly be poorly served by having a new generation take over, because the people who are in there clearly don't have the answers. And if you look at the protests and the way they were run by the youth who ran the protests, in a 2-week period, you had a series of young people, or a group of young people, build a legal aid response system in 2 weeks in 36 states. That's something that at 60 years, Nigeria has not been able to build. With all the wealth of the federal government, with all the wealth of the state governments, we've never been able to build. That's essentially a public defender system. We've not been able to build it as a nation, and they did that. We had the same group of people raise over 120 million naira in a 2-week period and give daily accounts of how they spent it and what they spent it on. So there's competence, there's capacity within the young generation. There are tools and a world that everybody's moving into the future around the world. Clearly, our leaders are stuck in the past. And you have a generation that understands the tools of the future, that understands the trends of the future, that understands where the opportunities are in the future. Within Youth Party, we've identified a number of leaders. If you look at our trustees, if you look at our leadership within the party, we have people who have built real businesses. We have people who employ labor. We have people who have a real connection with what's happening in the country and understand what it is.
But some persons will tell you that it's beyond businesses, because you're looking at, a 200 million heterogeneous society that you are to manage or handle. And if we are talking about age, we look at the US. How old is Trump? How old is Biden? And you saw that it was the youth that massively came out to actually vote for this president. Yes. Is it really about age? Is age really the issue?
So for me and for a lot of people, it's usually been about competence, okay? And so far, somehow, the older generation, or the age and the lack of competence, has always found a way to go hand in hand, okay? So for us, we're saying that, okay, there's been a lack of competence, and then the age issue with it. Can we have younger folks take over that have a proven track record of competence in various fields that they've been part of, either in the public sector or in the private sector? So it really hasn't been a conversation around the age per se, but it's just about the competence and the willingness to get things done. Because we've seen a lot of complacency, and I mean, so we have folks that have been operating on the same playbook for over 30, 40 years, okay? You have the same response to issues that you would have seen 30, 35 years, and then you're wondering which future do they want to build for anyone? They don't seem to have clear paths they don't seem to have a clear plan and clear path to chart. So we're saying that we cannot keep going along this route in 2020, neither do we want to go along that route in 2023. The world is moving at a very high-paced speed, and we don't seem to be interested in going in that direction.
And the youth are going to bring that to the table. They have that competence. The youth that you have seen now have that competence and be ready to bring that to the table.
Yes.
Because what a lot of people are looking out for, beyond competence, rather, is the fact that we need to make our public offices unattractive. Are they ready and willing to do that? Wealth distribution, are they ready to deliver on that? These are the issues beyond looking at what we're talking about now.
I agree with you. Not every youth is going to be competent. Not every youth is going to be capable. Not every youth is principled or deserves to be in government. And so it does matter what parties you're looking at. It does matter what people you put into power. So for Youth Party, we understand that we say we're looking for a generational change, bringing in a new generation of competent, capable people who understand the world and where it is going. And so there's a filtering process. We're not putting into office or putting into even competition every youth. People are screened, people are checked for competence, for ideological alignment with what it is that we stand for. And what matters to us is integrity. The point about businesses matter because you have a lot of people in government who have never built anything. So you're asking if you're applying a bar to incoming people that you haven't applied to the people who are in government right now. A lot of these people have only made money from government. And so if you look at our Board of Trustees, if you look at our National Executive Council, you'll see people who are able to build businesses that thrive. You'll see people who have jobs, who have other sources of income, and so don't need to go in there and make the salary of 20 US senators. Or the equivalent of 20 US senators to do their jobs. Because actually they have thriving businesses, they have capacity. And so if you want to compete on our ticket, it's critical that you sign up to say that if in power, we will fight for these changes. We will fight for rational economic policies. We will fight for rationalization in the way the government spends money so that we're not spending all of our money on recurrent expenditure and salaries. You will fight for economic policies that make sense. If you look at the aftermath of the EndSARS protest, you have the central bank freezing the accounts of protesters, chasing people at a time when inflation is at an all-time high. Food index inflation is at an all-time high. It speaks to the fact that the governments of the day, and this is at federal level, this is at state level, this is at all levels, don't have an answers to the problems of the country. They don't have an understanding of what is happening. So you're right, Nigeria is a complex institution. And when it comes to elections, when it comes to 2023 or 2021, when you're looking at people, you do need to grill at candidates. You do need to grill them for, do they understand the complexity of the country? Are they prepared?
Very critical.
Yes.
Are they prepared to address that? And because the next question, which I'm throwing to you, Dipo, is the fact that when you look at our history, before, since independence, when you look at the civilian, the military, we have had young people at the corridors of power. And the question is, how much change have they brought to the table? Have they been addressed, have they been able to address the issues of corruption? You see a lot of them even now.
Yes.
What have they been able to do?
So I think that it's a coin that goes both ways, okay, that has two sides. Now, we've seen some young people go into government and then fumble, but we've had a lot of older people who have gone in there and they've always fumbled. So take your pick. So do we still want to go along the same route we've been going before? Do we want to stay in the status quo? Do we want to do that? No. So in the last elections, 2019, there were around 84 million registered voters, 15 million new voters. And hopefully, now that INEC has said that they're going to open registrations in January, we're hoping that a lot of people get to go register so that in 2023 we can have a higher number. Because we also need to understand that in the last 8 years or so, there are also people who have been eligible to vote but haven't even registered. Now, out of the people that even registered to vote in the last elections, 2019, the percentage of people that casted their votes, there were only half of them. So there is a lot of education that needs to go into
Because that's the question I was
electoral
going to ask.
Yes.
How politically enlightened are the youth
Yes,
as we speak?
so right now, a lot of people are politically enlightened and politically charged up, which is why I've been having this conversation with people saying that INEC is going to open registration centers and all of that in January. Okay, for me, Q1 of 2021 should let us know that if we're really serious about this change we're talking about. I mean, so if we were able to have around 15 million new voters in the last elections, and understanding that there are people who right now are 16, they're 17, they're 16, they're going to be 18, or they're 18 already, within the space of time.
That's where data comes in.
That's where data comes in. So we should have at least 25 million people, new voters, come on board for the next elections, hopefully.
Now, when your party came in 2019, what kind of support did you get from the youth? Were you able to gather that data so as to know how to channel your attention to that age range in the coming years?
We believe that there's definitely a real hunger among the youth to build a better Nigeria and to participate in the process. I think the reason that they're apathetic about it is they see the choices that they're given. And they look at those choices, and it's clear that you're looking at two sides of the same coin and that there's no real change. And so I think what's critical, what's really important, is that we present better candidates. So that's what we're dedicated to doing as a party, to people who have real ideas, to people who have a real understanding of how to change the country. It's also critical, I think, that INEC starts this registration early next year. It's critical that INEC overall creates a free and fair playing ground without intimidation.
When you say free, fair playing ground, how do you
So if you look earlier this year, INEC, deregistered 74 political parties. We had to sue them in order to win the right to compete. Through 2023, we won that right in the Federal High Court about 3 weeks ago. And so you see basically an attempt to reduce the democratic space, to reduce the number of people who can compete.
There were certain requirements that INEC asked that political parties meet up with. That was the challenge for them.
Okay, but are these communicated ahead of time? Are these communicated clearly? Are they applied evenly? And if you go and look, if you actually look through the details of it, you'll see that INEC is fairly arbitrary in some of their pronouncements and in the way that they apply the rules. So some parties get to slide without the rules being applied to them, and you can ask why that is. And so what's critical for us is that INEC create a free playing field, that they allow people, because you need the emergence of new parties, of new contestants. The political space is better for it. And we believe that we have people who will encourage the youth to come out.
All right, we believe that on that note we can end this conversation. We hope that INEC will take the points, ensuring that there's a level playing field for all parties so that the youth can pick from and make their voices heard, because that's what they have been clamoring for over the years. We must thank you, Tomiwa Aladekomo, that's the acting National Chair, Youth Party, Strategic Consultant, Public Affairs Analyst, Dikbo Oyewole. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us.
Well, let's tell you now that